All right, folks, welcome back to another episode of the For the Cat podcast. In this episode, we're going to be hitting three things. We're going to be hitting the Warriors versus Knicks game that just happened, and then we're also going to be talking about a little bit about the Jonathan Kuminga saga and the trade offers that the Warriors might participate in. And then lastly, we're going to be hitting on some of the big picture stuff regarding Steph and the Warriors and what it means for him to continue to be on this franchise. So, first things first, the Knicks game. So the Knicks without Jalen Brunson, he sprained his ankle in the game prior, which was against Sacramento. Looked like he came off of like an action or something, or he tried to like plant, explode, and unfortunately he sprained his ankle. So he wasn't available to play against us, which was a win because, Jalen Brunson, I wouldn't say he's a Warriors killer, but he is somebody that can give the Warriors problems, even though historically, like, a lot of people want to claim that Moses Moody can guard Jalen Brunson, but I beg to differ. So, yeah. But however, in this game, I thought a lot of the issues with the Warriors stemmed from defensive issues. Offensively, it was a whole different story, and we'll get to that in a minute. However, defensively, the Warriors, like, I've always mentioned how the Warriors have a point of attack issue. Like, they have a foot speed issue, an athleticism issue. They just struggle to stay in front of people. And against a team like New York that is very gifted offensively, that's not a problem that you can afford to have against this team. Like, when you look at the Knicks and how they're built, like, they have so much offensive firepower. They have, Karl Anthony Towns, who's a stretch five, but he's more than just a stretch five. Like, he's a real matchup threat. Like, he can post up, he can obviously shoot the three, and he can, like, drive downhill and get all the way to the rim as a 7-footer. And then you have OG Anunoby, who's super strong, super quick, super athletic, has a ton of downhill force, and can also shoot the three. He also becomes a matchup problem. And then you have Mikal Bridges, who, he's built in a funny way where he's like a watered down version of like a Kevin Durant. Like, KD, he's much more polished, he's much more intelligent as a scorer than a guy like Mikal Bridges. And Mikal, like, you can't sneak a smaller, lesser defender on Mikal because Mikal, he can take full advantage of that matchup. And, you go down the list, like today, Deuce McBride, he was the one that was starting for the Knicks, and he has great shot-making ability. Like, the way he gets his shot off, like, he has that high release point where he can, like, elevate and then shoot over the top of people. And, he was giving us a lot of different issues with that type of threat. So, like, the Knicks with their combination of, like, downhill penetration on top of that, with their over-the-top shot-making, it became, in certain possessions, I wouldn't say a nightmare matchup for the Warriors, but it became quite a bit of a problem for the Warriors to stop. Like, especially in the first half, there were so many possessions where, like, guys were just attacking, our players off the dribble and getting all the way to the rim. And there was a lot of people that was trying to either help, that was trying to recover, and they just couldn't because, again, they don't have that personnel. They don't have that size. They don't have that athleticism. So because of that, we just couldn't stop guys from just breaking the paint and getting 2 feet all the way to the rim. And then on top of that, Mikal Bridges and Karl Anthony Towns, like, they were hitting shots over the top. Like, we were trying to, like, sneak Steph and Pods to, like, guard Mikal Bridges. And Mikal, like, he was exploiting that matchup. Like, he's got long arms. He can get a shot off over anybody, and he was doing just that. And then another part of the problem defensively is defensive rebounding. Now, I thought Draymond and Al Horford and even Jimmy last night was a bit lazy. Like, I thought they could have competed better on the glass, but all in all, it was more so a first half problem. In the second half, I thought the Knicks, they took their foot off the gas, and perhaps if they would have played certain lineup combinations better, they probably would have continued to mash on the glass. However, in the first half, there was just a lot of people that just didn't keep cat out of the glass. Now, here's the thing. Like, this is the problem with the Warriors. Like, the Warriors, they have, they have centers. They have Al Horford and QP. The problem is they don't have size behind their size, if that makes any sense. Because, I was going to explain this problem in another podcast, but I'm going to do it right now. So pretty much the Warriors, since they have a point of attack problem, if people are beating their guys off of their dribble and they're getting all the way to the rim, that means the help side, who's usually the big that's guarding in the dunker spot, he has to step up and protect the rim. When he steps up and protects the rim, somebody else has to crash down on the center that's getting ready to put back the shot. Now, usually, whoever's down there with the center is usually a guard. Like, it's Pods, it's Steph, or it's like Moody or something like that. And those guys, they can't keep up. They can't keep off the center from crashing the glass. That's the issue. So, the issue itself isn't the fact that, like, the Warriors don't compete enough. I thought last night was a one-off, but the real issue is, like, the point of attack. So pretty much, like, guys would get all the way to the rim, and then the center would just clean up the mess because there's no one to keep him off the paint. And then another issue is just, I thought the Warriors made a lot of defensive mistakes off the ball. Like, there was a lot of breakdowns, a lot of errors off the ball that shouldn't have been made. Like, for an example, the Warriors, I've always criticized their ability to help and recover. Their closing speed is not the same as other teams. Like, the Warriors, they have a lot of, they play a lot of 3-4 guard heavy type of lineups, and a closeout from a 6'3", 6'4" guard is completely different to somebody that's 6'7", 6'8" that has like a 6'11" wingspan, right? So, the Warriors, they don't have the ability to be able to recover. That's the biggest thing. Like, the difference between a great and a good defensive team, like for an example, OKC, they're a great defensive team because of their ability to recover. All great defensive teams are going to give up advantages. They're going to give up windows where the offense can exploit their defense. The difference between a great and a good defensive team is that a great defensive team will limit that window. They wouldn't allow that window to be so wide and so long. That's the difference between OKC and every other good defensive team in the league. And even though the Warriors, they're like, top 5 in defensive rating, they can't really minimize their window of advantages. So when they give up a numbers advantage on the weak side, they're always caught in their heels. That's the main thing that I'm seeing. Like, you see a lot of the veterans, like, I've criticized the veterans for their effort and their motor. And the main thing that I always speak about is just their ability to be able to be on their toes. Like, especially like if you're guarding 1 or 2 passes away, you got to anticipate that the ball is going to be swung into your direction. So if that's the case, you got to get ready to move. You got to get ready to close out. If you're not doing that, then teams are just going to get wide open shots. And those are the type of shots that can change the complexion of the game. And there were so many possessions where, like, guys were either ball watching or they were throwing like lazy swipes at the ball, or they couldn't get around a ball screen, and it just led to so many open shots. And like there was just not an urgency to like throw extra closeouts either. And I thought one of the main culprits of this problem was Will Richard. Now, I've given Will his flowers. I obviously believe in his potential and his ability to be a great player for our team now and in the future. However, Will, we were able to see some holes in his game last night, and a lot of the holes just stem from his ability to guard, with great angles at the point of attack. But another thing is just getting around ball screens. He dies on too many ball screens. Like as a defender, the way that he defends, he's got to be able to get around a ball screen and get back in front and fight for position. Because for him to cause so many deflections and have active hands on defense, he can't just give it all away by not understanding positioning, by not being able to get around a ball screen, etc. Like, that's the next step for him as a defender, being able to guard without fouling, being able to take the right angles on the ball, being able to get around a ball screen. That's what he needs to work on. And then, Steph, he was guarding off the ball for the most part, and like he was losing shooters off the ball. And even Melton, Like, for certain possessions, he was losing guys off the ball as well. And there were certain shots in transition where guys weren't getting back, and we already know the story with their transition defense. So, yeah, I just thought it was just a combination of those issues, like the Knicks and their firepower, the defensive rebounding, and just the defensive breakdowns. And that's the main thing. Like, the breakdowns are things that you can control. And, I get part of the reason is, like, the vets, they want to preserve their energy throughout an 82-game season, but in certain games, in certain periods of the game, you have to kind of be engaged and locked in so you can build yourself a cushion to be able to preserve your energy. If not, if you're just going to play with the same lackadaisical energy from minute 1 to minute 48, then you can't guarantee yourself a position to be able to win, you can't guarantee yourself to be in a position to win the game. So that's that. And then offensively, I want to speak a little bit about the lineups. So the trend for the Warriors that's been working very well thus far is the second unit lineup. So the Jimmy-led lineup with Al Horford, Melton, and I think it's Pods and Will Richard, that lineup has been putting in work. And the reason why is because Al Horford has been healthy and he's been playing much better with Jimmy. Earlier in the season, him and Jimmy, they weren't really meshing well together. And the reason why they weren't meshing well together is because Jimmy, he has this play style where, he slows the game down and he plays at his own pace. And Al Horford, he's not somebody that is really used to playing that way. Even though Boston, for the last few seasons, did play slow. But Boston, they had guys that can attack the paint. They had guys that can create, that can shoot the ball, that understands how to get the defense into rotation. Jimmy Butler, on the other hand, he doesn't really achieve that because he's very unpredictable with his approach. So because of that, when you park Al Horford off the ball and he's getting the ball with like 5 seconds left on the clock, it's completely different compared to when he's getting the ball with like 14 left on the clock. So, early in the season, they weren't working well together. But then Steve Kerr eventually just had them play pick and roll relentlessly, and that's where they really work well together. Like, you have Al Horford popping, you have Jimmy just, getting downhill aggressively, and that's where Jimmy can either get to the rim or Al Horford can get an easy above the break three. And then Melton, Melly's been playing so well, like, ever since his ACL injury, and, he's been doing such a good job attacking the rim and getting 2 feet in the paint. That's the biggest adjustment with Melly. Like, some of his early struggles came down to two things. Him not being able to just make shots that he normally makes, and then 2, he was shooting a lot of off-balance shots at the rim. He was shooting a lot of off-foot, same-hand type of layups at the rim. And, that's a very tough shot to make at the rim. But the biggest thing with him is that he needed to play off 2 feet more. And I think once he made that switch, it became a game changer because he was continuously getting downhill much easier compared to before. And he's actually making a lot of those shots now. Like, he has a lot of great left-handed finishes going to the rim. Like, tell me another player on this team, minus Jimmy Butler, that gets to the rim the same way that Melly does. And Melly, he's actually the point guard coming off the bench. Steve Kerr, he might label Pods as the backup point guard, but it's really D'Anthony Melton. Melton is the one that's handling the primary ball handling responsibilities. And what that does is that it slots Pods into a role that suits him better than him being on the ball. Because Pods, he's not a pure point guard. He's not somebody that can handle ball pressure up the court. Melly, he's more gifted at that than Pods. And Pods, he's supposed to be a secondary ball handler. That's how he was in his rookie season. And, him and Melly, they've been playing much better because Melly is stepping up as a ball handler. And as a result, you're seeing these 20-point performances from Pods where, he's actually looking to, like, take shots. And that's a rarity because, like, he passes up layups so often that, like, for him to make the shots that he made last night, they were just laughable because there's so many possessions where I watch him, he gets to the rim and he's like underneath the rim. The help side's not even there yet. They're getting ready to rotate over and he's already ready to kick the ball out and not even attempt a layup at the rim. And it's like you're not even willing to shoot at the rim, but you're willing to shoot a double step back in the corner with the shot clock winding down, or like a turnaround one-legged fader from the right baseline, like or a hook shot, wherever the case may be. Like he's a funny player, man. That's all I can say. And then Moses Moody had a good game. I think he shot 7 for 8 or something like that from 3, 20 points, and he made an impact. But the main thing that I took away while watching the game was that his value is really only tied to his shooting. Like Moses Moody, it's been a very undulant production-wise. It's been an undulant production for him throughout the entire season because his shooting is the only thing he can really offer to the table. He's had really good games and then really bad games. He hasn't really had games where it's like in between. It's like, yeah, he's not making shots, but he's doing X, Y, and Z. No, he hasn't had any of those games. He's out here either shooting the Warriors out of the game or he's going off for a heater like how he did last night. And he's in year 5 and he's still not getting better. So for me, it's like he's not that valuable as a player. He's not a starter. I don't envision him getting any better. I think he's already reached the ceiling, and I don't think he's going to be a better defender. Like, I don't care what kind of physical attributes he has. The way he plays defense, he'll never be a good defender. The way he opens up his hips and allows the offensive player to like already have a lane to get downhill, and for him to not be able to like guard some mediocre guards like Deuce McBride last night, he's not going to be able to be the player that you and I think he's going to be. So yeah, that's that. And then Jimmy Butler last night, I think, played the best game that he did as a Warrior, minus that playing game against the Grizzlies. Because Jimmy Butler, the way he approached the game last night was what I initially thought we were going to get on a consistent basis from Jimmy Butler throughout an 82-game season. Now, obviously, I expect it consistently, but I don't expect it every single game. But I did expect a better ratio. Like, I expected him to be more aggressive just like that last night compared to being passive. And, just watching him like aggressively get to the rim, like the way he was aggressively getting to the rim last night, it was a thing of beauty. It was exactly what this team needed because this team has an issue getting to the rim. And Jimmy Butler is supposed to solve that problem, and he did it last night. The way he was able to hold his line going to the basket, that's how you know that he wasn't fishing for any like foul calls. And, the term holding your line in basketball, if nobody knows what it means, it just means that once you make your move to the rim, you have a line between you and the rim. You just got to make sure you hold your line and go in a straight line towards the basket and not allow the defender to bump you off your path. And, I always get on Jimmy Butler for his production and his, second option scoring ability during the regular season for like the last few podcasts. And the reason why I get onto him so much about it is because, the way he scores 20, the way he scores 25, 26, 27 points, it just doesn't look like somebody that's a superstar. Like, it's one thing to score that amount of points. It's another thing with how you do it. That's the thing. And I was supposed to upload a podcast of that Warriors versus Clippers game, the game where Jimmy airballed the turnaround fade. One of the things that I talked about was that both Kawhi and Jimmy scored the same amount of points, but Kawhi, he scored his points in more of a superstar fashion. Jimmy Butler, he scored more of his points from the free throw line. And, obviously it's him getting to the free throw line is not the problem. It's just the way he's doing it, the way he like seeks marginal contact to like try to get free throws and like not have, and like try to like avoid creating his own buckets. However, last night, that 32 ball that he just dropped, that is superstar level behavior. That's how a superstar should be able to go and score the basketball. The free throws only come from your aggression and from him holding his line, getting to the basket, and not trying to like flail, flop, and try to like sell a call. That's what I was expecting from Jimmy Butler. That's what I want. Just consistent aggression. Like he was getting deep penetration. Like usually Jimmy, he would like barely touch the paint and then already get off the ball. And that's not the way he should do it. He should be able to get all the way to the rim, draw the defense like deep, and then be able to kick the ball out and create longer closeouts for his teammates. And the whole time I was just watching it, I was just thinking like, Jimmy, is this really so much to ask? Like this is all I ask for, and is this really too much? And I was just watching and thinking about it from an objective standpoint. And honestly, in some ways, I'm not gonna lie, it could be. I'm going to give Jimmy some grace in the sense that, for myself, like as a player that gets to the rim, it's very, very taxing to play that way consistently. So I understand that. So for him to, coast the way that he does during the regular season, I do get that. And I did get that before. However, I just wanted a little bit more of it consistently throughout the regular season. But knowing that he still has this type of aggression in him at the age of 36, it's very promising. Like that alley that he caught off of a back screen from, I forgot who set him the back screen, but Al Horford threw a great lob pass to Jimmy Butler, and Jimmy Butler he literally got up for that alley. Like they had to raise the rooftop on that one because he looked like he was his young self. So props to Jimmy Butler. That was a real 32 ball, man. And then Steph, lastly, I'm going to talk about Steph. I was supposed to talk about the lineups. So the lineups, the Jimmy Butler led lineups, we already talked about it. So I'm going to talk about the Steph lineups. So Steph, I don't like the lineups that Steve Kerr is surrounding Steph with. Like, I'm looking at the lineups, you have Draymond and GP2 with him, and I just don't understand that because both of them are non-factors on offense. Teams don't guard GP2 and Draymond. They purposely leave both of them open. And I understand that, like, GP2's job is to, like, play pick and roll with Steph, but if that's the case, then you're allowing the offense to just help off of Draymond, to ignore Draymond even more because he's not a part of the play. Unless he's a part of some three-man action, but he's not. And then, on top of that, if you flip it around, if you have Draymond play pick and roll with Steph, now GP2 is going to get wide open corner threes that he can't make. And then on top of that, you're going to surround him with guys like Brandon Pajemski and Moses Moody or Will Richard. And those guys, they can't handle the ball. So Steph is the only ball handler out there. And he's surrounded with non-ball handlers and two guys that are non-factors on offense. And you wonder why Steph has a half like he did last night where he can't get it going because the defense is all honed in on him. So a lot of these lineups, man, like they got to fix it, bro. Like they have to have either both, or they have to have either one of Dre or GP2 on the court separately. It can't be at the same time. If they're on the court at the same time, it's going to affect Steph's production. Steph has to play with Al Horford. He has to play with QP. He has to play with people that are threats on offense. If not, then his production is gonna tank. So yeah, the lineups, I'm just not a fan of it. And yeah, I think that's all I got for the Knicks game. And then shifting over to the Kuminga talks, apparently we got some new information. So Kuminga wants out of the Warriors, obviously no surprise. And then apparently the Warriors, they might not have any interest in wanting to move Jonathan Kuminga at the trade deadline. And I think this is bizarre because number one, I'm not really 100% buying it just because I think, there's just no way that they're actually going to go down this path because at this point, it's not about getting a return on investment. It's about putting this chapter to close. Like, first of all, in terms of ROI, getting a return on investment, who do you think you're going to get for him? You're not going to get Giannis. Like, I'm sorry, bro, but like to continue to bank on that situation of a potential, event where Giannis wants out of Milwaukee and you're going to be the ones to jump in. Number one, you're not going to have a better package than most teams in the league. And then second of all, you don't even know if that's going to happen. Giannis has not once ever requested a trade out of Milwaukee. And you're just sitting here like holding out for him when it's not guaranteed that he's going to be available. And then in terms of the second issue, like putting this chapter to the close, it's just common sense. I mean, there's a conflict between the coaching staff and Jonathan Kuminga. The coaching staff doesn't believe in what he can potentially bring to the table. They want him to play a certain role. He doesn't want to play that role. And here's the thing, JK, he has some type of upside. And the reason why I say that is because in the Minnesota series, he was our main firepower. Jimmy Butler was leading, but JK provided more offensive firepower than Jimmy Butler in that series. And for him to play the way that he did in that Minnesota series, he's gonna get credit in some way. And the thing is, whenever people think about that series, people never talk about the series before that. The series before that against the Houston Rockets, he was unplayable in that series. And I don't want to hear nothing about minutes because Pat Spencer didn't play for longer than JK, and he gave the Warriors better minutes in that series than JK. So I don't want to hear nothing about minutes, okay? The reason why JK was able to play better against Minnesota and not Houston is because against Minnesota's front court couldn't stay in front of JK. JK, he has that first step quickness as a threat. So they couldn't stay in front of JK. JK was able to get to the rim because it was a great matchup for him. Whereas Jimmy Butler, he doesn't have that same quickness as he once did before. He more so now relies on physicality and downhill strength. But that's a problem that Minnesota can shut off because they have Rudy Gobert, they have Julius Randle, they have Naz Reid, all of these tall, big, strong, lanky guys that can shut off what Jimmy brings to the table. So that's that. And then when you think about the Houston series, they had athletes and wings that can match what JK brings to the table. They can match his quickness. They can match his athleticism. So because of that, he couldn't do anything. He couldn't get to the rim. He couldn't do what he does, draw fouls, etc. So for him to be unplayable in one series and then be the main offensive firepower in the next series, that's such a huge imbalance, and it's so inconsistent to where I'm going to say that he does have upside because I'm giving him credit for what he did in the Minnesota series, but at the same time, we don't know what it is because in the Houston series, he was so bad. So like, whatever the case may be, his upside is his upside, and it exists, but we don't know where it falls along the spectrum. That's the thing. However, in order for him to find that out, he's got to be on another team. He can't be on our team because he'll never discover his identity as a player. I think he's still too raw, and I think the coaching staff, particularly Steve Kerr, Shams reported that their relationship is fractured beyond repair. Steve doesn't believe in him. So if that's the case, if you have two sides that don't really want to cooperate with each other, why continue to drag this out? You're going to keep him buried on your bench for the rest of the season, heading into the offseason. Meanwhile, he could produce and he could, contribute his value to another team if you just get rid of him already. Like, I don't understand this idea of like trying to like hold out and potentially get something big for him because you're just not. And then on top of that, this dude, he's not going to work out for the Warriors, but he at least give him an opportunity to discover his identity as a basketball player. Why are you holding him hostage all because of what you could get in return? I just don't get that. And then, shifting over to the MPJ talks, apparently the Warriors, they don't have any interest in MPJ. And I find that funny because, on one hand, I can kind of understand, like, the dude is injury prone, he's on a big contract, and his contract is about to end soon, so I get that. And on top of that, like, he also wants touches, he wants to apparently be an all-star, he wants to play free basketball, essentially. I get all of that, right? But then, on the other hand, he solves a majority of your offensive problems, because, the Warriors, in my opinion, they're so flawed to the point where they have offensive and defensive problems. However, the MPJ trade, it's not going to solve everything, but it's going to solve a majority of their offensive problems, because D'Anthony Melly, he's now fixing their ball handling problems. Al Horford is starting to become healthy. Jimmy Butler's another part of their ball handling. So if you add Michael Porter Jr., who's an elite shot maker off the ball, which is how the Warriors want to play, he's going to elevate the offense in so many ways. 6'10" can get his shot off over anybody, and he's showing a better ability to being able to pass off of having two off the ball. Because if he's gonna come off two off the ball, he's gonna be able to draw similar gravity to Steph. And if he has two on the ball against him, everybody makes fun of him for not swinging the rock, but he knows how to get off the ball and being able to dissect where the hope is and find the open man. He showcased it against the Warriors. And now he's actually able to get to the rim and finish. That was one of his weaknesses in Denver, and in Brooklyn, he's shown a strong ability to get 2 feet in the paint and playing off of the threat of a shot. And then defensively, he's been better too. Help side, he's been jumping passing lanes, he's been protecting the rim, and he's not a great point of attack defender, but everything else that he does on defense, I think it compensates. And then I think the package that we're coming up with is Jonathan Kuminga, Moses Moody, Buddy Hield, and a first-round pick. Apparently, the Nets want 2 first-round picks, and if that's the case, I'm doing it. Like, the Warriors, they're, number one, not a good drafting team. Under MDJ, Mike Dunleavy Jr., it could change. However, history shows one thing, and I'm just going to stick with it. And the second thing is that, the Warriors, they still have a ton of draft picks. So I don't understand why they don't want MPJ. Like, MPJ is somebody that's going to fall in line with the system, and for some reason they just don't want him. I just don't get it at all. But if not MPJ, what trade offers out there would the Warriors realistically entertain? Now, there's a few names. So I think Shan's reported 2 teams that are linked to JK, and it's the Sacramento Kings and the Dallas Mavericks. Now, the Sacramento Kings, I don't know. The thing is, they've been linked to JK all of the offseason, and the only thing they were able to come up for us was Malik Monk. Now, the Warriors, they obviously don't want Malik Monk, and as the season goes on, I think, with the rise of D'Anthony Melly, I think we can actually step back on Malik Monk. But however, minus Malik Monk, like, who else could they offer to us? Like, the Sacramento Kings, they're boring. They're boring in the sense that, like, there's nobody on their team that intrigues us besides Keegan Murray. But they're not going to want to get off of Keegan Murray because Keegan Murray, he's a young player and he's a part of their long-term plans. So, besides him, I mean, who else? We're not obviously going to take DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine, or Domantas Sabonis. We're not going to take Dennis back, even though I like Dennis and I thought, there was a chance he could have worked out for us, but we're obviously not going to take him back. And then, I mean, you look down the roster, like, we're not taking Russ. The only person that we can realistically want is Keon Ellis. But Keon Ellis, like, with a trade, involving him and JK, that's not possible. So, yeah, the Kings, man, I don't know, man. For me, it's not really too intriguing. And then Dallas is more interesting because they have more pieces that can help us, because we need wings, we need athleticism, and Dallas, they do have that. Like, first of all, I think we can comfortably say that we're off of AD. Like, AD was it was a conversation, but ever since he got injured, I think we can completely hop off of this ship, because there's no way we're going to throw the kitchen sink for somebody that just cannot stay on the court. It's just that simple. Like, I don't care how talented you are. If you can't be available to showcase your talent, it means nothing. Availability is the best ability, and AD's got none of it. Besides AD, I think, first of all, Klay Thompson, we're not taking him back, okay? Klay Thompson, he's making almost $20 million a year, and he's coming off the bench. And he can't do anything else besides here and there he'll have a good shooting game. So, yeah, we're not going to take Klay Thompson back. He's not going to help our team. We're not just going to take him back because, he was a part of our history. So, we're off of him. But besides both of those players, I think there's some intriguing options. Number one, I think Najee Marshall would be a very underrated pickup. He's somebody that provides that athleticism at the wing position, and he's got insane finishing touch. Like, he's somebody that can play, he can be a bigger GP2 for the Warriors. Like, he can play pick and roll with Steph and, come down the middle of the floor and actually make reads and finish plays, because he's got an OP floater. Watch Najee Marshall play. Najee Marshall has an insane floater off the dribble. And then, another option is Max Christie. Max Christie, he's taken a leap with his 3-point shooting, and it's become a real threat. And on top of that, he's like 6'4", 6'5". He's got a long wingspan. He plays with a lot of motor and a lot of energy. And again, that's something that the Warriors do need. I think if we acquire Max Christie, he's easily going to be our starting shooting guard. And for years, we couldn't fill out that position, but I think Max Christie is good enough to take on that kind of role. So our starting lineup, it's going to be filled out with Steph, Max Christie, Jimmy Butler, Draymond, and QP. I think that's a good starting lineup. And then another option, PJ Washington. Now, in terms of contracts, I don't know if PJ Washington is available to be traded, but if he is, I'm taking PJ Washington. He's going to be able to, buy into that small ball that the Warriors like to play. He can play the 4, Draymond can play the 5, and he's a good, help side defender. Like, he can rotate over, protect the rim. He can close out to shooters. Occasionally, he can even switch out onto the perimeter and actually guard, some really crafty and quick players. So, PJ Washington, I like him as a defender. And then offensively, he can make shots, he can attack closeouts, and provide a lot of rim pressure. So, in terms of value, I think PJ Washington's on the table. And then lastly, Gafford is one of those guys that the Warriors want. And on paper, I do understand it. Like, he's going to be a permanent starter. He's going to provide a lot of vertical spacing, to which the Warriors don't have a lot of. And, he's a real rim protector. He prides himself on being able to, spike the ball. So, I think he's like a better TJD in the sense that, whatever TJD does, he can do it better. And I think he can also run the floor as well. He just provides that physicality underneath the rim that the Warriors need. The problem is, he can't really do anything else besides dunk. He's not a good connective playmaker. He obviously can't shoot the ball, and he's not even really a great switching big. He's not mobile like Al Horford, where he can switch out and guard out in the perimeter. And on top of that, I don't think he's a great fit offensively alongside Jimmy and Draymond, because Draymond needs to have the ball, and if Draymond is not a part of the play and he's playing the 4, and Daniel Gafford, he's not gonna do anything besides be able to dunk the ball, which means he's gonna have to play pick and roll with Steph, meaning that now parks Draymond off the ball. So then that now goes back to the dilemma that we were talking about with Draymond and GP2. And then Jimmy, he's been shooting the ball at a good clip, but you don't want to put him in a position where he's going to have to make jump shots. So on paper, I understand the Gafford interest, but at the same time, it can backfire because it can be a clunky fit. And then besides Dallas, I mean, apparently, I guess the Lakers have interest in Jonathan Kuminga. I don't know why, but I guess they do. But the first thing I want to talk about is that would the Warriors even want to trade with the Lakers? Because when was the last time the Warriors traded with the Lakers? Like, I don't think you want to help your rival here, but if we do entertain those trade talks, who would we even want from the Lakers? I think the Lakers might actually be worse than the Kings in the sense that, like, the only thing they can offer is like Jared Vanderbilt, Gabe Vincent, Rui Hachimura, Dalton Connect, and all those talks, like, they just don't interest me. Like, Rui Hachimura, is the only name that I would somewhat consider, and offensively, he brings a lot of value, but defensively, he gives it all away. Watch him defend in the postseason. He's not a good defender. Like, he's almost like similar to Buddy Hield, where he's like an airhead, where he doesn't really know what he should be doing. And then everybody else, it's just silly. Like, no to Vanderbilt, no to Gabe Vincent, no to Dalton Connect. Like, all those guys do not help us win. So the Lakers, they would be like a last resort. And then lastly, I think there was like some talk with the Heat as well. Like, apparently, I think the Heat and Jonathan Kuminga have mutual interest. And if that's the case, do you think we can get Wiggins back? Like, if we get Wiggins back, that would be so elite. Like, the Warriors with a closing lineup of Steph, Wiggins, Jimmy, Draymond, and Al Horford, that's a championship lineup. Because Wiggins now addresses that 3-and-D issue with the Warriors. He can guard the other team's best player as the primary POA, and he can make jump shots. He's shooting 40% on like 5 attempts. That's perfect for the Warriors. And if we can get Andrew Wiggins back, the Warriors, they have a real shot at beating anybody. Like, a realistic shot. I know I've said that before in the past, but getting Andrew Wiggins back would be like the missing piece. But who knows if we're actually going to be able to be in that position. But if not Wiggins, I guess, I mean, I honestly, I don't even know who else. I guess maybe, do you think we can get Norman Powell? I don't know. That one seems like a reach. But yeah, those are the main trade offers that I'm seeing right now. And it's going to be an interesting deadline because, on one hand, I'm kind of a little disappointed. But on the other hand, I'm not really 100% buying into the fact that they don't want to make a move. So now, let's transition into the last thing I want to talk about. Why is Steph continuously wanting to put up with all of these issues in Golden State? Like, if the Warriors are actually being for real about not wanting to make a move and not wanting to move Jonathan Kuminga at the deadline, they're pretty much telling you that they don't care to prioritize you. Yeah, they made a move for Jimmy Butler, but they had to. That's the thing. If they were somehow hovering around 500 heading into the deadline and they weren't below 500, they wouldn't have made a move. It was only when they were like at risk of like being played out of the play-in tournament, that's when they made the Jimmy Butler move. But besides that, the front office has made zero moves to prioritize Steph, and Steph is playing at an all-time level. So if you're Steph Curry, if you're a real competitor, right, if you want to win, why are you still putting up with this? To me, there's only two reasons that explain why Steph doesn't demand a trade from the Warriors or demand the Warriors to make moves. Because the truth is, if Steph wanted the Warriors to make all of these moves, it can happen instantly. Like, Steph is all they have. The Warriors exist because of Steph. If Steph goes to the front office and says, hey, you got to get rid of this guy, you got to get me more help, you got to get me this, you got to get me another star, you got to get me another player, etc., they would do it in a heartbeat. But because Steph doesn't put that pressure on the front office, look what happens. He's having the front office make decisions for him. And I think the two reasons why is because, number one, he wants to preserve that image of him as a nice guy. And I think that's foolish because, although it increases his reputation as a teammate for being like a nice guy, like a lot of his teammates never have anything bad to say about him off the court. I think the curse with doing that is something like this, where you don't want to hurt nobody's feelings and you're now in a predicament where you can't get out of. And then I think the second reason is that he's not the competitor that we thought he is. Because if you really are, like if you're playing some of the best basketball in your later years as an all-time great and your team is failing you, how are you not upset that you're in this position where you can't compete? If you're truly a competitor, you would be upset to the point where you would go to the front office and tell them, I need to be in a better position to win. If you don't, then your career, it's going to have diminishing returns just like this. So I just don't get it, man. I just don't understand why Steph wants to continuously to stay with the Warriors. Like, loyalty and all of that, I get. But like when you list all of the reasons, like the Warriors, they have a Kuminga problem. They have a Draymond problem. They have at times a Jimmy Butler problem. They have a young players problem overall. They have all of these problems that pile up all together. A Steve Kerr problem. So many of these problems that are just stacking on top of each other over and over and over again. And Steph, he's the one that is the center of it all. He's the anchor of everything. And he's just not saying a thing. And like, I think like this is like who he is. Or actually, it's been who he is as a player, because he's never been the vocal voice of his team. We obviously know he's the leader, but he's not the vocal voice of the team. Draymond is. So because of that, I think Steph, he's too laid back. He's too chill, man. And I just think he needs to be more assertive. I think at this stage in his career, he's got to be in control of where his career is going to head towards. You've done enough to give this franchise what they need. I think it's only right that you demand what you want in the later parts of your career. I don't understand why he just doesn't do it. Like, there's just no logical reason. But anyways, thank you so much for tuning into this podcast. Like always, I have more coming soon. Take care, everybody. Have a great day.